Henry winced, his small right shoulder dipping down as he tried desperately to pull his arm away. Tu Na didn't let go. She looked down, blinking in the bright sunlight, and realized she was gripping her son's wrist so tightly that her own knuckles had turned a stark, bony white. There were no roaring diesel tractors here, no heavy splintered packing crates stacked precariously in the yard, no sharp harvesting tools left carelessly in the dirt. It was just a sunny, perfectly paved path at the city zoo, but Tu Na's eyes were still darting rapidly from side to side, scanning the harmless blooming flower beds like they were a hidden threat. Her brain was still completely trapped in farm rules, the unforgiving reality where letting go of your child's hand for even 1 second could mean an unthinkable disaster. Welcome back to the channel. We spend so much time talking about the physical work it takes to build a safe, comfortable life for our family. We show you the planting, the harvesting, the building of fences, but we rarely talk about what happens when you finally reach a place of safety. Sometimes the hardest part of leaving the farm for a few days isn't the long bus ride or the packing. It's leaving the survival mindset behind. Today was supposed to be a pure reward, a celebration of months of grueling, muddy labor. But looking at my wife's tense shoulders, the rigid line of her jaw, I realized a quiet, painful truth. Tu Na didn't know how to stop surviving. The air around us at the zoo smelled of spun sugar, warm asphalt, and fresh popcorn, completely foreign to the damp earth, wet bamboo, and wood smoke of our morning routines back home. We were hundreds of miles away from the deep, dark irrigation ponds and the unpredictable stray dogs that usually made up Tu Na's daily obstacle course. Yet she walked with the stiff, braced posture of someone navigating a minefield. Her hands, deeply calloused from gripping a heavy hoe and sorting rough vegetables, were clamped around Henry like a vice. When a small flock of pigeons fluttered near Henry's feet, causing him to giggle and step off the concrete path toward the grass to chase them, Tu Na yanked him back with a sharp gasp. "Stay exactly on the path," she whispered, her voice tight, immediately brushing non-existent dust from his freshly ironed shirt. Henry looked up at her, confused and slightly hurt. He wasn't in danger. The grass was practically a cushion. But to Tu Na, the world was still full of sharp edges, and her job was to be the shield, no matter how exhausting it was. The zoo was massive, blanketed in soft, rolling green lawns and surrounded by sturdy, chest-high enclosures. It was a sanctuary designed entirely for children to wander safely. But as we walked slowly past the primate exhibits, I watched my wife deteriorating under the weight of an invisible burden. Her motherly radar was stuck on maximum alert, the dial turned all the way past gentle protection into pure panic. Back home, in the quiet but physically demanding rural atmosphere of our farm, her hypervigilance was what kept Henry alive. There, she had to constantly shout over the hum of the heavy water pump to keep him away from the spinning belts. She had to watch his every step near the garden gate where the muddy road dropped off into a deep ditch. That constant, exhausting awareness was her primary tool of love. Here, that same tool was suffocating them both. I walked a few steps behind, carrying our bag, quietly watching the dynamic unfold. Henry spotted a low, wide stone ledge, perfectly flat, completely safe, and maybe 6 inches off the ground. He scrambled onto it in his new, clean sandals, throwing his arms out to balance like a tiny tightrope walker. It was an act of innocent, joyful play. "Henry, get down right now." Tu Na's voice cracked like a whip, much harsher than she intended. She rushed over, grabbing him quickly by the waist and setting him hard onto the pavement. "You're going to trip, ruin your good clothes, and scrape your knees. Do you know how hard we worked to afford this trip?" Henry's small shoulders instantly slumped. The bright, curious light in his eyes dimmed as he quietly murmured an apology, suddenly terrified of his own shadow. He stood frozen on the hot pavement, afraid to touch the glass, afraid to walk near the bushes, afraid to simply be a child. Watching this, my heart sank. I finally realized the profound tragedy of our situation. We had spent years working our fingers to the bone, saving every spare coin, enduring the heat and the exhausting routines of the farm, so that we could give Henry moments just like this, moments of pure, carefree joy. We had built a better life. We had bought the ticket. We were standing right in the middle of our long-awaited reward. But poverty and hardship leave a deep, invisible scar on how you parent. Tu Na was trying to protect our hard-earned money and her son's safety with the same desperate, frugal energy she used to save a dying crop from a storm. She was micromanaging his every breath because, in her mind, one small mistake still meant absolute ruin. To try and break the heavy, suffocating tension that had settled over our afternoon, I gently guided us toward a brightly colored vendor's cart parked beneath the shade of a massive oak tree. It was selling thick, hand-scooped ice cream. I stepped up and ordered a towering, bright pink strawberry cone for Henry. When I handed the vendor the cash, I saw a familiar, anxious shadow cross Tu Na's face. The price for this single, fleeting treat was easily equivalent to a massive sack of premium chicken feed back home, or enough seeds to plant a whole new row of winter cabbage. In our daily life, every single coin was assigned a vital job. Buying sugar and cream on a whim went against every strict survival rule we had lived by for the past 5 years. But I smiled at her, shaking my head slightly, silently asking her to just let this one go. Henry, however, was completely oblivious to the silent financial mathematics happening above his head. He took the cone with both hands, his eyes wide with absolute reverence. It was a rare, vivid luxury. For the first time all day, his small body relaxed. He started to skip down the wide, flat walkway, humming a quiet little song to himself, finally acting like the carefree 4-year-old he was supposed to be. But just 2 minutes later, the inevitable happened. His new sandal caught on a microscopic, almost invisible seam in the concrete. Henry stumbled forward. He threw his free hand out to catch his balance, and the heavy scoop of bright pink ice cream launched from the cone, arcing through the warm air. It hit the hot pavement with a wet, heavy splatter. If this had been a normal child from the city, they might have instantly burst into tears over the lost treat. But Henry didn't cry. He didn't even make a sound. Instead, he went completely rigid. He froze, his small hands still hovering in the air, his shoulders pulled up tightly to his ears. Slowly, he turned his head and looked up at his mother. His eyes were wide and filled with sheer terror. He was bracing himself for the storm. He was waiting for the familiar, harsh scolding about wasting food, about carelessness, about ruining the things we worked so hard to afford. The silence between them was deafening, heavier than any noise in the zoo. The air around us went completely still. Even the distant sounds of the passing crowds seemed to fade into a dull hum. I stood frozen a few steps away, gripping our bag, watching the two of them locked in this terrible, fragile moment. Tu Na stared down at the ruined ice cream melting rapidly onto the sun-baked asphalt. I could physically see the internal war raging inside her. The old, frugal Tu Na, the woman who had learned to count every single penny, who had cried over a lost crop in the freezing rain, who viewed any form of waste as a direct threat to our family's survival, wanted to snap. Her jaw clenched, her chest heaved. I saw her lips part, the harsh, reprimanding words already formed on her tongue. "Look what you did. Do you know how much that cost? Why weren't you paying attention?" But then she looked up from the pavement and saw Henry's face. She saw the absolute fear in her little boy's eyes. This is the hidden, practical work of healing that nobody tells you about. Decompressing from a survival mindset doesn't happen automatically just because your bank account finally has a small cushion, or because you took a weekend vacation. It requires active, incredibly difficult choices in the span of a single second. It means looking at a dropped ice cream and consciously forcing your brain to understand that it is just a dropped ice cream. Not a financial crisis, not a failure, not a disaster. Tu Na closed her eyes. She took a deep, trembling breath that seemed to pull all the rigid protective armor right out of her bones. When she opened her eyes again, the harsh glare was completely gone. She didn't yell, she didn't calculate the lost money. Instead, she knelt right down on the dirty concrete, bringing herself perfectly to Henry's eye level. She looked at his sticky hands, looked at the tragic pink puddle on the ground, and did the absolute unthinkable. She laughed. It started as a soft, breathy chuckle, and then grew into a warm, genuine laugh that echoed across the path. The physical relief that washed over Henry was instant. The terror melted from his posture. His little shoulders dropped, his chest expanded, and a moment later, he burst into a fit of bright, musical giggles, falling forward into his mother's open arms. The sound of Tu Na's genuine laughter seemed to break a heavy, invisible spell that had been hovering over us for months. I smiled, feeling a tight knot untie in my own chest, and stepped forward. Pulling a crumpled napkin from my pocket, I gently wiped Henry's sticky, pink-stained fingers. The mess didn't matter, it was just melted sugar, not pesticide or engine grease. Later that afternoon, as the golden hour light began to stretch across the vast green lawns, Tu Na wanted to take a photo of us under the sprawling branches of an ancient oak tree. Henry, now completely unburdened and buzzing with the pure energy of a child who finally felt safe, was impossible to contain. He kept jumping up and down, pulling on my arm, while I tickled his ribs to keep him close. Tu Na held up her phone, trying desperately to capture the perfect, still, staged portrait to prove that our hard-earned trip was a success. But Henry wouldn't stop moving. The camera clicked. The resulting photo was completely chaotic. A massive blur of waving arms, a tilted green horizon, and 3 wide, unguarded, laughing faces. A few months ago, deep in the darkest trenches of our survival phase, Tu Na would have sighed heavily and deleted the picture instantly for not being perfectly composed. She would have scolded Henry to stand straight. But today, she just stared at the glowing screen. Her thumb hovered over the delete button for a long time before she slowly lowered the phone, saving the image. That blurry, disorganized picture captured the profound hidden cost of our healing. Perfection is merely a strict metric of survival. Real, unscripted family joy is supposed to be wonderfully messy. That evening, as we returned to the familiar embrace of our simple wooden house, the atmosphere felt fundamentally different. The heavy diesel pump was turned off for the night. The sturdy bamboo gate was securely latched. The scent of damp earth and wood smoke was exactly the same, but the suffocating pressure was completely gone. Tu Na sat quietly on the edge of the wooden porch in the fading twilight, bathed in the soft glow of the kitchen window. She didn't reach out to grab Henry's wrist. She didn't frantically warn him about the dark edges of the yard. Instead, she just watched as he ran freely across the grass, chasing the early evening fireflies with a joyous, uninhibited energy. The true transformation wasn't about the balance in our bank account, but the hard-won peace resting softly in my wife's posture. The deeper truth we realize today is that the ultimate purpose of all our grueling, muddy, back-breaking labor was never just to survive the farm. It was to buy the right for our son to simply be a child, unburdened by our adult fears. As the evening chill settled over the yard, I walked out and wrapped a warm blanket around Tu Na's shoulders. We sat together in the quiet, watching our boy play, silently wondering how many other invisible survival rules we still needed to unlearn. But for tonight, the farm was just a home, and a dropped ice cream was just a dropped ice cream. If you've ever had to unlearn the hard habits of surviving to truly enjoy your life, please share your story with us in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel to walk beside us as we continue building our farm and healing our family one day at a time.